Hey gang, Volty here, doing another post-match commentary. This is round 7 of Swiss of the Plenty of Games Winner Library event. On the left we have Braden on Moonshine, on the right we have Cody on Gorgeous Reanimator. The textual update when past me finishes that. I believe that Cody was able to ID into top 8, but Braden was not. And so this became a win-in for either player. And let's get right into it. This matchup is kind of weird. Moonshine can put on a lot of pressure, but with how the points have changed over time, they don't have quite the same ability to introduce mechanics like the initiative, which are historically good against these all-in combo decks. However, access to graveyard hate is a little bit limited in general. The main deck, they don't quite have the ability to play things like Voidwalker and Deathrite. There's nothing really in Boros that gives you the same equity there. There's sometimes they play Lion's Ash, and I have seen lists that are playing Containment Priest, but otherwise the bulk of the interaction with the graveyard comes from the sideboard, which does mean that Cody typically should be winning game 1 here. And then in terms of post-board, the fact that a lot of your graveyard hate costs mana, and you don't have the ability to play something like Leyline of the Void, and your Rest in Peace can get Thought Seized. I would say that Reanimator has a decent edge in this matchup, especially since the last points update, where Red-White received 3 points. Alright, so players are preparing, shuffling up for game 1 here. I'm not certain who won the die roll, but that is very critical. If Braden gets the play... they haven't done the die roll yet. Okay. It's a 2. Looks like the play is called odd even, so we still don't know. If Cody has the play, I expect him to be about 70-75% to win game 1. If he has the draw, it's probably about 60. But I think he definitely has a significant edge in game 1. Moonshine kind of has to have the nuts in order to beat Reanimator in game 1, or to have packed significant hate in the main deck. Plains Go, going to be met by Strand Go. Cody found a Valgavoth, which is one of the better threats. Braden has a turn to Leon and Arbiter. Fetch is going to be cracked in response, of course. Arbiter is going to check stuff like Vampiric Tutor and Worldly Tutor and Entomb, which does help a lot. However, the fact that it wasn't on turn 1 and couldn't check the first fetch land might be enough. Cody going to Bone Shards the Leon and Arbiter, binning Valgavoth, and does have the Reanimate. So now Valgavoth is in play. Braden is never going to be able to answer it. He's going to be dead in 3 turns, if not less. Is never going to be able to race. So GG's game 1, I assume. I mean, it's theoretically possible that Braden can answer a Valgavoth and have enough permanence in play to sacrifice to the ward, but not given the window that we've seen. The fact that Valgavoth is in play on turn 2 and not on turn 3 or 4, and Braden hasn't developed a 1-drop and his 2-drop blew up, I don't expect he can win this game. Strip Mine on Undercity Sewers. I don't know if I agree with this in general. If you strip mine, you really need to be ahead in order to offset the parity that changes. But because Braden is so far behind, and now he can get stripped back, you're just putting yourself further and further behind from getting the ward cost paid for this Valgavoth. I don't think we're meant to play strip mine there. Notably, Cody shuffling some lands in hand, but with Valgavoth opting to play the strip mine from Braden's Exile, which does count as a land drop for turn. So eschewing his own land drop in order to strip the plains. And that's one turn of Valgavoth connecting. 2 more turns and Braden is dead. And needs so many more permanents in play. And an actual answer to Valgavoth. Solitude is perfect. Solitude is perfect. Okay. This is going to put Cody at like 26 or something. And then a Blood Moon. Notably, Cody has the basic Swamp. So not going to be too impacted by Blood Moon, although will lose the ability to cast certain blue spells until he finds a basic island. And it's really strange to think that this game is on like turn 4 when there is a mountain and a Blood Moon in play on one side and a swamp and a mountain on the other side and no other permanents. But in saying that, Braden's on like 11, Cody's on like 26, and they're probably just going to go for a bit. Cody looking for either a basic island to cast something or a way to get a creature into the graveyard. There's quite a lot of reanimation spells in hand. And Braden looking for action here. Hasn't found anything yet. Has 4 mountains in play. Chromok's a big draw here for Cody. Gonna give him access to blue mana. Opting to Chromok's a black card and just cast a Sheoldred, and assuming that she'll end the game quickly enough. Which I think is reasonable. I mean, Braden spent the Solitude, doesn't have access to white mana, took 9 from Valgavoth. So Sheoldred's gonna kill him in 2 turns. Entomb. Gonna put an Archon in the graveyard, tap the Chromok's for black, and that's lethal. And Cody takes game 1. Game 1 definitely the freebie. Braden with very little access to graveyard hate in game 1. Notably did play a bunch of hateful permanents. Leonin Arbiter helped against... Leonin Arbiter didn't do anything, but did present a bit of interaction against Cody's game plan, and then managed to pay the ward cost on Valgavoth using the Solitude's body before the evoke triggered, which is a very heads-up play there. If he had 1 more permanent, he could have sacked the cat and kept the Ajani, and that probably would have actually got him there, because he would have been able to make cats every turn, and then the Blood Moon would have been a red permanent, and he might have actually got Cody down from the 26 or so he was on after a lifelink and a Solitude. So that game could have swung in a couple of different ways there, actually. But in saying that, edge definitely to Reanimator in that matchup in game 1. Game 2, Braden's going to be bringing in anywhere between 8 and 14 cards. Cody going to bring in probably a maximum of 4. Although it looks like it's closer to 7. Really opting to be a bit more interactive here. I saw a Decay and a Force a Negation, possibly as ways to answer Graveyard Hate. And the thing about Gorgeous Reanimator, and Reanimator in general, is that the resources you need to win the game are actually very low. Unlike traditional Storm combo decks, for example, where you need a critical mass of spells, Reanimator, if you can get something into the graveyard, and it didn't cost you a resource with something like Careful Study, and you have a reanimation spell and some amount of mana, that's all you need. So the rest of your deck can be built to be quite reactive, and we've seen a lot of the Reanimator shells going back to Force of Will blue cards and discard spells and cantrips and opting to keep the win, quote-unquote, as lean as possible, which is very different to the all-in mono-black Reanimator of days past. So Braden in the spot looking for turn 1 disruption piece, turn 2 disruption piece, turn 3 some kind of game-ending threat. And if he can put that together and isn't disrupted too heavily by Cody, that's how you win this matchup. Game 2 is incredibly important, not only because Braden is, back against the wall, but because this is the game he has to play. Game 3 is going to be on the draw. He's going to be susceptible to turn 1 discard spells, and really, really needs the stone nuts. He's going to take a mulligan. Looks like Cody in the tank here. I saw an Entomb. I saw a Thoughtseize. Has Force plus blue card, but it's Force negation. So if it's a creature and it's a hate piece, might stick here. Unfortunately, to power anything out, it can't be with something like a Chrome Mox, because Cody might force that. And Braden going down to 5. Still winnable. Hate piece threat is very easy to do with minimal resources. Obviously it is harder, but if he's mulliganing for something specific, I can understand why you would go down to 5, because, a hand of turn 2 Ajani, turn 3 Broadside is not going to cut it against Reanimator. Found a Sanctifier, that's a big one. If you can cast it on turn 1, that might be it. Because I don't know how often Cody's countering a Lotus Petal or a Chrome Mox here. So if your hand is land, Petal, Sanctifier, that might be good enough. Gonna shock in a Sacred Foundry, gonna put a Chrome Mox on the stack. He is gonna force it. Super heads up. And then Thoughtseize is gonna tag the Sanctifier. And now Braden has to rip it. Has to rip a land off the top. And all he's casting is a Thalia. So Braden on a mull to 5 with basically the nuts for a mull to 5. And Cody had the counter nuts, had Force blue card plus Thoughtseize, which is probably the only way you ever beat Sanctifier in Vec. It checks everything you can put in the graveyard. That's crazy. If he didn't counter Chrome Mox, I think he just lost. If he saved the Force to plan on countering like Rest in Peace or Blood Moon and got Sanctified, I think it was over. Gonna pay 2 for a Ponder here. Finds a Worldly Tutor, a land, and a something. If you spend 2 mana for Worldly Tutor, you can then spend 2 mana for Fanatic. Don't have anything in graveyard. And Braden could draw a land and play Archon here, which is like decent. So you're gonna chip in for 2. Does he have a third land? Does not. In that case, it's probably going to be fetch for Surveil land and then Worldly Tutor in this turn cycle? Or are we going to be more aggressive? If you don't fetch for Surveil, you're definitely meant to get Swamp here. Because we've already seen that Braden has been playing Blood Moons. And probably playing... Alright, we're getting a trope. What are we casting here? Bitter Triumph? Spinning one for Chromux. Exiling Archon. And I'm going to say go. I definitely think we're meant to get a Swamp. Or a Surveil Land. I guess we're spending... Oh, we're spending 2 to entomb something into the graveyard. And then spending 2 in upkeep to put Metamorphosis on top. And this line wouldn't have worked if Braden could cast this Archon. And this... I imagine this is a handshake. I mean, Metamorphosis getting back Atraxa while you have 2 cards in hand, or 3 cards in hand, and 2 mana, and you can't cast anything meaningful. This has got to be it. Okay, found a Plow. Plow gonna check the Atraxa in response to its trigger. Probably not. Like, that timing is correct, but probably not super relevant because the Thalia is in play. And Cody wouldn't be able to cast like a misstep anyway. Haha, did hit the misstep. So Dance, Scalding Tarn. MT probably gonna get either a removal spell or a show and tell. I think it meant to take a different instant. Takes VT, Reanimate, Scalding Tarn, Dance. No creatures in graveyard, notably. You can play the Tarn, you can say go. Can block the Thalia. Okay, well, having the Plow means that Braden isn't dead on the spot. I don't know how often you're winning here. The Thalia attacks would be building up more significantly if Cody hadn't been able to make all of his land drops. 2 mana Grafdigger's Cage going to be put on the stack. I imagine this is just being met with a Surveil. Probably still correct to get basics. I mean, the Chromux making black does protect you and insulate you. And I guess if you find a creature to put in the graveyard, you do have reanimation spells to try and find. Shoulder just getting slammed. Metamorphosis Fanatic cracking in there. And now Braden needs, like, Solitude, White Card, Ephemerate. Which is possible. It's not likely. I mean, that mulligan to 5, in theory, was backbreaking. But at the same time, he had the nuts for 5. And if Cody didn't have exactly Force, Blue Card, Thoughtseize / Inquisition, game could have been over. Sanctifier just would have got there. Heads up play by Braden here. Chumping with the Thalia into the Metamorphosis. Specifically so that he could cast Celestial Purge. VT going to be put on the stack here. I imagine it's either a removal spell for a cage or just another threat. Sheoldred's gone. I don't know how many castable threats there are for Cody. Untap and just cast a show and tell. Valgavoth versus Broadside. I mean, Now it's probably it. VT for show and tell. Pretty common line. That's why they're playing MT as well. I think getting Baragov would have been fine. But in this case, if Braden didn't have 0 unknowns, I think show and tell is maybe a little risky there. I'm going to cast a Mox Diamond and blow it up for a bit of showmanship. GG's, Cody wins 2-0 versus Braden. Gorgeous Reanimator versus Moonshine. It was a very interesting match. Braden almost won game 1, which is like the harder match, the harder game to win. And then he mulled to 5 and drew Not a Butters and got countered by Not a Butters. Absolutely crazy match, to be honest. And it very could have easily swung the other way if any small things, any number of small things could have happened. We could have seen a game 3. But otherwise, GG's.